Hello, everyone. My name is Tameka Citchen-Spruce, and I am really excited today to moderate this much needed discussion on navigating accessible living in Detroit, but this also can be applied to other, urban cities across the country. Just a little bit about me. I am a Detroit native and Detroit-based disability justice activist, also a filmmaker, and I'm currently work for Michigan Disability Rights Coalition as the co-director of a leadership program for BIPOC individuals with disabilities and their parents. And so, like I said before, housing is such a big issue. I do have a spinal cord injury as well. I was involved in a car accident when I was a baby. So I am a T2 incomplete spinal cord, have a spinal cord injury. And so, just navigating the whole housing and just, always when you have, use a wheelchair, the litmus test is like, can I close the bathroom behind me? And, just all sorts of things. I just recently bought a house, and that was a whole, thing as well, trying to, find a house that, fit for my needs as a wheelchair user. And so, really excited to, here today. I would like to thank Christopher Reeves Foundation, Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation for hosting the event and inviting me to moderate this discussion. And so I have three wonderful ladies with me today that we're going to, that's going to share their experiences as wheelchair users in housing, and they're also experts in this field. So, we're really going to get an understanding of, accessible housing market in Detroit and surrounding areas. We're going to talk about how to navigate the system and all of that. And, just really, see what kind of opportunities we can do to, um, in order to make change in when as far as when it comes to affordable and accessible housing. And so I'm going to have the ladies to please introduce yourself um, and your connection to housing. So the first person I'll go to is Jill Babcock.
Hi everyone, I'm Jill Babcock. I am a Caucasian white woman with blonde hair, glasses, and I'm wearing a blue shirt today. I am a disability rights attorney, and I also work for the Housing and Revitalization Department in Detroit. I really specialize in housing issues. I guess that's pretty much my whole introduction.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa Franklin.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tameka, and to the Christopher Reeves and Dana Reeves Foundation. Excuse me, I'm Lisa Franklin, and I'm the CEO and founder of Warriors on Wheels of Metropolitan Detroit. And we are a nonprofit advocacy and education group of people with disabilities for people with disabilities. Excuse me, I've been a wheelchair user for 26 years from a drunk driver car accident in 1996. And I've been an advocate over my organization for 14 years. So we worked with Jill and the city of Detroit and on a federal level and state level to try to do things to better the situations on the ground for folks in the disability community. And so I'm happy to be here today to share my experiences and also talk about ways that we can assist you or give you some ways and some thoughts and ideas on what you need to know to navigate the system to find affordable, accessible houses. So I'm glad to be part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Holly.
Hi guys, I'm Anna Holly. I'm a wheelchair user. I was injured as a baby at 14 months old. I'm a gunshot survivor, so I was shot as a baby, and that ultimately caused me to be in a wheelchair. And I am an advocate for the disability community. I've spoken on numerous of panels. One in which that I usually speak about, I help children who are disabled. So I speak on a lot of panels for children who are like in high education, and speak on their behalf for them to have privileges that able-bodied kids can have. So yeah, I'm excited to be on this panel with so many amazing women. And let's get the discussion started. Thank you so much for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation for having all of us.
Thank you. So let's get this discussion started. And the first question, and this could be, open-ended to, to everyone to answer or anyone. How has the community of Detroit and surrounding areas changed over the years when it relates to the accessible housing? Whoever, Jill, since I know you, the attorney.
Yeah, let's start with you.
Oh, well, legally, so I'm gonna try to give a legal perspective whenever I can, because unfortunately our stories are going to sound very similar. We all have had absolutely awful situations that other people would, I don't know, freak out about. But in 1991, the Fair Housing Act totally enacted its amendments to begin requiring housing stock that was for occupancy after March of 91 to be readily adaptable for accessibility. So anything built after 91 will have wide hallways, wide doorways, etc. Unfortunately, the city of Detroit historically is over 300 years old and hit its peak population-wise in 1900s, 1950s with the northern migration. A lot of our housing stock dates back to post-World War II, therefore is not readily adaptable under the Fair Housing Act. So do I say it's changed? In our lifetime, it has changed. However, it's not, unfortunately, in our community, it's that change is not really reflected because housing stock has not changed that much. If we went to a newer community that is being built and developed as we speak, then we'd all have much better luck. But the problem is then we don't have the amenities of sidewalks or taxi cabs or public transportation. So it's a real crapshoot. I can't say that word, but it's there are a lot of sacrifices that you have to make for weighing the odds. Lisa, what are your experiences?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jill. And I think that it's gotten better, but we still have a long way to go. I mean, as far as them including people with disabilities to sit on boards and sit at the table and include us in some of the planning for the state in the housing arena, that much has gotten better, but because those things have just come to light, like within the last couple of years, we still haven't seen the effects of it. And so it's still going to take a while. But as far as the city enforcing landlords and developers to build and include people who need accessible housing, it's still been a challenge. It's still been a challenge. So a lot of times people with disabilities are pushed out of the city to live in some surrounding areas that may have more accessible housing. And that is really not fair to the community, because a lot of us want to stay right here in the city of Detroit and where we're comfortable, where our family is, where our friends are. And so it's just important to know your rights and important to speak up where need be. Attend all meetings are open. All meetings are open, and you're welcome to voice your opinion on things. And that's what we need. We need more voices to come forward and talk about the issues. Because right now, if you're silent, they don't believe that there's an issue. And so they don't try to correct it. And so it's very important that you get involved. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's really the truth.
And I think all of us could agree with that. And like you spoke about before, Lisa, I had to move all the way to like 45 minutes outside of Detroit, to get a house with a ramp on it. We had to, my husband's childhood home is in the city of Detroit, on the west side of Detroit. And we lived there for about 3 years. For about a year living there, I didn't have a ramp on my house. And I was a new mom, with the new baby. No, I couldn't get anybody to build me a ramp. There's no funding for those things. I couldn't get in a bathroom. So I had to go somewhere else to get those amenities that we need. So for me, I don't think it has changed in a little bit, but not as much as we needed to.
I agree. Like I say, I think that it's going to take at least another couple of years before we actually see the housing plan, implemented. And so,
and I
like
also think
myself
more
too,
of
yeah.
these discussions too, like, more of these like platforms for us to be able to speak, because I do think it's so many people making the decisions that aren't wheelchair users, aren't,
Exactly.
disabled. It's so many decisions being made, and people like us aren't at the table. So I do think more of us need to be in those discussions.
Yep, I agree.
And so that goes
Listen,
to
that's why this webinar is so important and crucial. And I want to thank the Reeve Foundation for inviting all of us, because we're talking about housing. We're not talking about, something you can do without. We're talking about a necessity for human rights. And I'm sorry, if I need a ramp, I need a ramp. I mean, that's all there is to it. Or a bathroom that I can use. We have to get the word out that they're not requests, they're necessities, they're needed. I'm sorry, all three of you had to move outside of the city. It's disgusting. I'm here only because, I've been saving my money and making retrofits as I go along. I've been here in my house for over 4 years. I have not yet been to my basement.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, and so that goes into the question of like, what if acquire, a disability, or, or you want to stay in your home and it is an older home, what do recommend people to do? Like if with the bathroom, door can close behind you, or, things like that. What are the recommendations if people are find themselves in that type of situation?
Well, with Warriors on Wheels, we have been partnering with organizations that will provide some like funding to do things like that. And then even with the city of Detroit, they have a program now, excuse me, the same program that the dollars come from to help seniors weatherize their homes. There's a portion of that that can go to people to modify their homes if they're a homeowner. And so when you're purchasing a home as a person with a disability, it's important to look for those things where you can be most comfortable and do as least as possible to have to modify a home. So wider doorways, excuse me, wider hallways, attached garages, those are things that you really want to look for. Maybe the washroom on the first floor as opposed to in the basement. Um, if you can afford a larger home, if you can get a basement that lets out into the backyard, maybe. I've seen those, and those have been really easy to modify and to access. And then if you are in an older home, if you can get some type of funding or dollars to put a lift to go down in the basement, if you can transfer to a lift, there's a lot of things that you have to look at, and all situations are different. So it's important, like I said before, to know your rights and know what you need to live independently in a home, in any type of space. Know what you need and know what makes you most comfortable. Mhm.
Yes, yes, thank you. And we also have a question, or more so a comment as well. But how, as people with disabilities, how do we ensure that developers are, hold them accountable to making projects accessible? So how do we, as a community, make sure of that?
If I could take a stab at that, I want to reiterate what Lisa said earlier, that it's very important to show up at the meetings and voice your concerns. The city of Detroit, we're working on enforcement strategies, and I can't say that we're there yet. It's been a long battle, but we're getting there. Um, just during this administration and maybe the Obama administration, the Housing and Urban Development Department of the federal government finally came to the recognition that they were their policies and practices for all the historically have been racist and discriminatory. And they're
Absolutely.
very transparent about that nowadays. It started with the Kerner Commission back in the 60s, and it's gone to the Supreme Court that this is a thing. So I think the federal government is going to start looking a little harder at developers, especially those that get subsidized for doing their work. Unfortunately, once again, as Lisa said, we're not there yet and we have a long way to go. But since people with disabilities and BIPOC are at the table, a part of the dialogue, we can start getting somewhere. This is not the old America, you know, there was the cleavers. We're coming together as people that have needs, and we're voicing those concerns. And actually a lot of people that do not share our needs are also advocating for us. So getting a little traction.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with you with that, Jill. It's too many people who are not, PWD, permanently, disabled, that are speaking, on these panels and are with these developers and things like that. It's not a lot of us. So, and I think until you actually know somebody who, and most of them don't even know somebody who are disabled. That's another thing. I don't think you really know what it's like until you're at least around somebody. Even, being the only person. I'm in leadership here at my job, and I'm the only one with a disability. A lot of things that I bring up, nobody has ever thought about. So I just think at least knowing one person could just change your outlook on a lot of things in regards to, disability and us needing those things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's I definitely, that's great insights and such, because our voices need to be heard. I know there are things like universal design and things that they could apply to. And I do know of one person that's within Words or Wills that he's working on doing some type of developing, and he's a wheelchair user. So I think that's great, getting behind individuals like that, who are disabled. So don't be afraid to go into developing, going into real estate and such, don't be afraid to do that, because, that you could, create opportunity, not just for yourself, but for others. Another question we have, or somebody I put in the chat, what are some of the foundations and resources available for those who are newly disabled and need to modify their home? So I don't know if there's.
Well, I can say that I do know of, it's pretty hard, but one organization called Bridging Communities. And I'll try to get the information and put it in the chat while we're online. But Bridging Communities has a lot of resources and different partners that they work with to help individuals do some modifications, whether it's ramping or widening doors or doing thresholds. So you can check with them. And also we now have a Department of Disability Affairs within the city of Detroit. And I would suggest that you give them a call. I'll also include them in the chat, but Google through the city of Detroit, the Department of Disability Affairs. And if you give them a call or send them an email, they should also be able to hook you up with some, excuse me for using that slang, but hook you up with some resources. Off the top of my head, those would be the two. And while we're talking, I'll look up a few others and put it in the chat for you. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, I just thinking there's always foundations that sometimes pay for modifying homes. I think if I'm not mistaken, Lisa, the Disability Network of Wayne County at one time had modifying homes, and there's trying to think Rocket Mortgage. I think that company was modifying homes. So, I think Googling, different home modifications, things like that, that the city of Detroit is offering. And, maybe there's some assistance through the state of Michigan as well. But just Googling and seeing what's out there as well. So I just want to shift it when it comes to rights. So, that goes hand in hand, understanding your rights when you being put into a different situation where, your landlord may not want to, put a ramp on the house, or they may not want to, do certain things, or, it's not safe housing, or whatever case may be. So we just gonna shift the conversation a little bit to rights. So my question is, what are some policies that we should be aware of in Detroit or surrounding areas that protects a person requiring accessible housing?
Jill, I know that's your expertise. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, that's all Jill. Jill is our
Yeah.
lawyer.
You guys are
Yeah.
so funny. This is so sweet, actually. That is a wonderful question. And on a daily basis, I talk to people about this because this is a concern. First of all, if someone says to you that an apartment is ADA or is not ADA, ignore them. They have no credibility. They don't know what they're talking about. The ADA rarely applies to housing issues. So the first thing you need to know as a consumer with these concerns is that the controlling law is the Fair Housing Act. If you demand a right under the ADA, the opposing side, the lawyer, is going to laugh at you and ignore you. So use the correct law, the Fair Housing Act. Now, renters, if it is not federally subsidized, the housing, you are responsible for the financial accommodations. So the grab bars, the ramp, all of that, you have to pay for. If it is federally subsidized, the landlord or developer has to pay for those things. Big difference. An accommodation at the end of the day cannot be denied. However, it can be negotiated. So it has to be a reasonable accommodation. Reasonable changes with everybody. So good luck with that one. It's going to be an argument, but communication interaction is the best way to go about this. The other thing is a landlord can refuse a particular accommodation if there is a financial hardship. That is an exemption. However, like I said, with negotiation, you can find accommodations that are not financially hard on the actual owner. We did have a question a while ago about emergency egress. And I think I would look at the lease itself. Everyone has a right to a quiet enjoyment of their home that is both comfortable and safe. So if the lease is silent to any sort of emergency egress, then try the local building code, even the local fire code, because, you know, depending on what the emergency is, the fire department might have to extract you from that dwelling. So right there, you have numerous policies and laws. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and I'm looking in the chat. Sorry, Tameka, and I see this about the flashing light. Jill, would you think that a flashing light for someone who has hearing loss and is deaf for safety reasons, in case there's a fire or some type of drill where there needs to be an evacuation, would that be a reasonable accommodation?
Yes, I believe it would. Unfortunately, depending on the building owner themselves, there might, you know, there might be an argument for undue financial hardship, but I think that's reasonable. I think that's something that's used regularly in, you know, for auditory or for sight impairments. So I think it's reasonable, and I would like to find a judge that disagrees.
And I think
Yeah.
too that people, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tameka.
No, go ahead, and I'll go to Lexi.
Well, I was just going to say that people should keep in mind that when they do rent a home and they make a verbal conversation with the landlord about some accommodations, that they get it in writing. And you don't have to be forceful about it, but if you know your rights, you can be confident about it. And you can say to them, you know, that this is what I will, well, just know your rights so that you can speak with confidence and authority that this is what you need in order to be comfortable and be safe in their dwelling, because I'm sure they don't want anything to happen to you. And so just be confident and know your rights and make sure. Yeah, go ahead, Jill. I see.
I just say that is exactly right. And it does not have, the request does not have to be in writing, nor does it have to be on any prescribed form. It can be verbal
It
by
can be verbal.
yourself or someone on your behalf. However, I just, from my legal background, I would always put it in writing. So you
Yeah.
have a paper trail of when you ask for this accommodation and whatever, you know. Here in the state of Michigan, we have some barrier-free laws that actually predate the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the state of Michigan has always been a front runner in disability rights, and it's a legacy that a lot of elected officials have forgotten about, but it's something that I myself, having researched and studied this area, I hold dear to my heart. So I think I was talking about federal laws before, but we have a lot of very strong state laws as well. And I don't want to give them the, you know, short end of the stick.
Yeah. So and then also know what has brought up in the chat about broken elevators. Now that was one of when I used to live in an apartment building. That was like the biggest issue in one particular apartment building. So was the elevators always breaking down? So can someone do anything about that, or you know, what can you do to combat that?
Cause
Okay,
all
I
the news
love
media.
that question because everybody questions elevators. I mean, how long have we all been talking about this, Lisa? Um, Currently, there are no laws that state that an elevator has to be working. There are any structure that is post 91 does require, under the FHA, they require elevators if it's so many floors. But unfortunately, because the housing stock and multifamily housing is so old here in the city of Detroit, there aren't a whole lot of answers for a multifamily structure that was built prior to 91 and it has a broken elevator. What I have found is I'm able to shame commercial entities into making sure their elevators work. How many times have you gone to a venue where you get turned away because you cannot access the floor because the elevator is broken? Or once again, I would really look at local ordinance, building codes, and the fire department. Not to mention, this might, if it's dire, might be a way for you to break your lease. I would suggest that you talk to someone about that before you just do that, because the consequences could be horrendous. But that is an option.
Yeah. So, and that goes into what if, with the apartment building and there's issues, it's not accessible or whatever the case may be. Like, who do you talk to if you're having issues in your apartment or condo and that with it not being accessible, who do you talk to?
I'm gonna leave this one to Anna and Lisa because I feel like I'm taking over.
It's like, yeah.
You're the lawyer, Jill. We listen to you.
Yeah, that's open. It's always open. So,
It is.
whoever wants to answer.
I mean, just from my experience alone, I've lived in an apartment once in my life, and the apartment didn't have an elevator. So it only had like one floor, and it only had one floor, but it was like from the outside. But it was only 2 apartments that were handicap accessible. So it took forever for me to even get that apartment. So I mean, that's a whole nother thing. And I called the news. I mean, that's the only person that I knew to call. I was young and I didn't know who to reach out to. So I don't think it's even a lot of resources for us to even know who to contact in those situations. So I called the local news. That's all I knew what to do to bring awareness to it. And I think a lot of other people are like that as well. That's the first thing, like the first point of action that people take, because I don't think it's a lot of resources out there to tell us who to contact in these situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely understand that. Lisa, who do we first with housing? I know Words on Wheels can assist, but who else can? Housing organization.
Well, I would say go to the city, or you can go to the housing authority. But I would say go to the city. Like I had to move out here to Dearborn about 7 years ago, just to get something that was close to. It still wasn't totally accessible, but it was a more open floor plan, and the insurance company, put a ramp on it for me. But the common area where the leasing office is and the clubhouse and all of it and the pool was not accessible. And when I moved here, they were putting they were renovating the clubhouse and the business office. And so they were putting steps there. And I said, but that's the common area. You're not supposed to have steps. They should be building a ramp. And they actually told me that the city of Dearborn approved them putting stairs there in the common area. So there's still a lot of educating to be done. But in something like that, you could go to the city and complain to the housing authorities within the city and or the city council in any city that you live in, and bring them aware of the issues that you may be having, because there are laws to protect you. And like I say, again, you should look at those housing laws and look at the laws under the ADA that protect people with disabilities, and just know your rights. I can't stress that enough.
You know,
So
there's
Lisa, when you
also a complaint portal
Mhm.
on HUD's website. It's www.hud.gov, and they have a complaint portal, so you can actually fill out, and there's a fair housing office. They will actually investigate. Now, they got stripped of their budget under the last administration, but they're coming back with the vengeance. So
Good. Thank you. And I did put that in the chat. Anna, you were getting ready to ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask you something. So were you ever able to go down and speak with somebody about the stairs being there? Did they do something about that?
I did
Especially
not,
since
but I talked to them in a leasing office, and what they did is well, first of all, I refused to pay for the clubhouse because it wasn't accessible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But but what they did is they had a utility ramp that whenever I went
Okay.
into the clubhouse, they would bring it. But still to this day, if I have to go impromptu up to the business office, I sit outside and they come out. They come out to me, and they still don't have a lift on the pool. And the reasoning for that is because it's not open to the public.
So
It's
do
only
they make
open.
you pay for all of those amenities?
Those
Like,
amenities
since you
are
live in?
still included. Those
Oh
amenities are
no.
still included. I know.
Wow.
If I was the only one living here, it would be different. But my kids and my grandkids, and
Yeah.
they all utilize it. So I just go down and sit by the side of the pool. But yeah, um, because it's not a public pool, they were able to get
Wow.
away with that. Now, Jill, I don't know if, because a lot of places around, like they've got the rec center up here in Dearborn, and they've got a park here, and all of those have wheelchair lifts. But here in the complex, yeah, because they said it's not open to the public, that they weren't obligated to get a ramp. I mean, a lift.
but they're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say there's one thing that I always want to say is that when you were having this initial discussion with the developers that were changing the clubhouse, I would not be surprised if you got this response, because I get it everywhere. Oh, it's grandfathered.
I hate
Yeah.
that word. Yeah,
And
that's
And
that
can you speak to that?
drives me insane. You cannot have a grandfather on a civil rights law.
They love mentioning grandfather. Like,
Or
that's their thing.
the FHA. I'm sorry, you know what?
I was saying they love using that grandfather word.
yeah.
None of us know where that came from. It's not a thing.
Wow.
So it's a myth. So that's what you say.
I go ballistic. I lose it. I just see red. My blood boils.
So Jill, so when someone goes to an
But
older building that was built during a certain time, and they want to say that they don't have to do any modifying of widening a door or taking away a threshold or something like that, because it's an older building and there's no such thing as what you're saying? There's still
Grandfather, but there is an exemption for historical buildings. But that means the building has to be listed as historical under the Department of Interior and has to fulfill all the eligibility requirements. They cannot say just because a building was built in the 20s, it's more important than the customer who's in a wheelchair.
And something else to remember too, that if there were any modifications done to the house, to the premises after 1990, that they're supposed to do the modifications to make it accessible.
In fact, that's when state law really comes into play, because our state law was actually in the early 70s.
Mhm.
So if you're in Detroit or in Grand Rapids and Flint, and you find something is inaccessible, chances are they were supposed to change that decades ago.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So we only have a few minutes left. Let's go by fast.
Sure.
We'll try to get it in. One person commented and said that she contacted Fair Housing to assist her with resubmitting an additional reasonable accommodation letter. And after that, they still didn't address it. So Fair Housing had to file a civil rights complaint. So even with, Fair Housing, you can get them to, with the file a complaint with them, but sometimes the property still don't want to listen. Like,
Mhm.
go figure, so they have to file a complaint. Another question is, let me see. Have you checked with your city's ADA coordinator? Let's see. Source. Center. Okay, so this person seems like they're just commenting about, checking with the city's ADA coordinator if you live in a city that has that, accessibility commission, which is true. Many cities do have that in the Housing Rights Center, a pro bono attorney. So there are, additional places, that you can go to that would need the help. And so with 5 minutes, just quickly go into Section 8 housing, because I know that is a something that, many people, low income use. So has Section 8 vouchers programs helped in the search for accessible housing? Why or why not? So does it
Okay,
help in the
well,
search?
does it
I
help?
don't think it. I don't think it has. I've haven't used it like for myself, but my best friend, she has cerebral palsy. She's in a wheelchair. She was looking for an apartment, and it hasn't helped her at all. Like, there isn't a lot of apartments at all that are accessible. She did find one, but the elevator was broke. So there you have it. I don't think Section 8 really helps, with finding accessible housing with that program.
And that's why we really need to work more with local municipalities to make sure, excuse me, that when they allow these developers to get contracts to build housing, affordable housing, and also housing that will accept Section 8 vouchers, that they're accessible. Or I saw somebody put something in there about universal design. We absolutely promote universal design. I mean, that is something that will give options to everyone. And that's what we're trying to be, a more inclusive community where everybody can live, side by side wherever they'd like. And something that I found out recently about a Section 8 voucher is you can get a Section 8 voucher in any other city and take it wherever you need it. I thought that you had to live in that city where you got that voucher for a certain amount of time before you could move it, but that's not true. And so when you hear of Section 8 wait list opening up anywhere, just if you need that, then you go ahead and apply, and you can take that voucher wherever. And I got that from the Housing Commission. Excuse me, I got that directly from the Housing Commission, and it's something that I did not know. So I hope that that helps someone. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people, you know, knew that. So thank you for that, Lisa.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well,
And so and there's Section 8, and then there's the tax-based apartments for yeah, apartments as well. So you can pay like 30%, you know, of your income, but still, you know, sometimes those are not accessible. So it's just a matter of, you know, finding, you know, a place that, you know, that you can move in comfortably, and, you know, and take what you learned today, you know, understanding your rights, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, go to different organizations and, you know, city programs to help you modify your home, or, you know, to help you understand your rights, to, you know, to get what you know, rightfully deserve. So, because I strongly believe, and I believe, and I know everyone on this call believe, housing is a right, you know. It's not something that, you know, like, oh, it's luxury. I believe everyone, you know, deserves to be in an accessible and affordable housing. So it's 3:58, and there's so much more to, you know, talk about with shelters and, you know, all of that. But, you know, maybe next time. So just want to thank Christopher Reeves and Dana Reeves Foundation for having invited me to moderate this discussion. And thank you to Jill and Anna and Lisa for joining me. And is there, oh yes, 3:59. So hope everyone have a great rest of their day.
and
Thank you, guys.
I did put my contact information in the chat for anyone that needs it. Thank you all. Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys. Thank you for
Okay,
having
Thank
us.
Jackie.
you.
Nice to meet you, Anna. Okay.